right, good evening. Welcome to the March 16th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. As is typical, I'll have to read Governor Baker's order into the record. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people and they gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website or town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. Members of the public wishing to participate from their remote location are encouraged to email their questions to planning@town.westborough.ma.us. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. The meeting can be viewed on Verizon Channel 24 and Charter Channel 191 or live streamed online at westboroughtv.org. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All right, I'd like to welcome the Open Space Committee. They've joined us for a joint meeting to hear a presentation from the Climate Change Task Force. Jim Robbins, do you have any comments before we get started?
At this point, no, I would just allow presentation by Peter Dunbeck and the Climate Action Team.
Okay, then I'll turn the meeting over to Peter to begin his presentation and introduce any members of the task force that may be in attendance. Peter, if you could just start with your name for the record.
Sure. Let me start with getting this open up. And so I am Peter Dunbeck. I'm the chair of Sustainable Westborough, but I'm here speaking as the chair of the Climate Action Plan Task Force. And I can show the task force here, and you'll note Tim Kaler, who's a planning board member, has been a very active and important contributor on the task force for the last year. And I won't read the names on the screen, but you can see there's representatives, school superintendent and board of selectmen and conservation and so forth, as well as very active and very valuable contributors from the at-large members, including Tim Paris, who is a former member of the planning board, as you know. The plan has been developed as you know. The town had voted at the fall town meeting in 2019 to form this Climate Action Plan Task Force with the specific objective of creating a plan for Westborough to respond to climate change and to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We have built this plan using the tremendous amount of work that's been done at the state level in regard to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The state has, for over a decade, had a law in place that is mandatory reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. It's called the Global Warming Solutions Act. Included in that is a series of requirements of the state agencies, EEA and DEP and so forth, to take actions to reduce greenhouse gases. One of those was doing this analysis that has been published at the end of this of last year, at the end of 2020, which provided a detailed engineering analysis, technology, economics, public policy, justice impact across the board, and looking at different scenarios and came out with a framework for how the transition to a net zero emissions could be achieved by 2050. They analyzed 8 different pathways and made recommendations on the one that is most advantageous to the state. So it's with this underpinning of change, this transformational change the state has outlined, that we're building our plan. Obviously, we don't have the resources to do all of this underpinning economic and technical analysis, so we're depending heavily on it. And our plans are using not only this analysis, but is focused on taking the programs and resources that are coming from the state and bringing them to Westborough in the most effective manner possible. The task force developed the plan we started by reviewing the plans from over a dozen other communities who have done work over the years in developing similar municipal plans, and identified what we considered best practices and adapted what other communities had done, as well as the state programs, with our understanding of Westborough to develop this climate action plan. The result of this is 4 primary goals and 6 secondary goals. The ones that have been identified as primary goals are the ones that change the greenhouse gas emissions to the greatest extent and have the most direct impact. So first is clean electricity. So we need to change our sources of electricity from fossil fuels into various carbon-free sources, primarily solar and wind, but it also includes hydroelectric and nuclear and other carbon-free options. The town of in Massachusetts, we have the option, as every resident, every consumer has the option of picking our own source of electricity. So our program is built on encouraging the adoption and movement to clean sources of electricity, carbon-free sources. Second is building, second and third are building and transportation electrification. We need to convert the heating systems and the engines in our cars from fossil fuel to electric sources. These can be done immediately, and they have dramatic positive impact immediately, even with the electricity supply we have today. But then as the electricity supply improves, that continues to improve the greenhouse gas emissions from the building and transportation sectors. The final primary goal is energy efficiency. It is the kind of the least expensive electricity, or the least expensive fuel energy you can buy is one that you don't need. So if you can eliminate the demand for electricity by insulation, weatherization, more efficient appliances and so forth, there's dramatic savings that can be made, and the economic benefit of that enhances the economic benefit of building electrification. So they go kind of hand in hand. The secondary goals also play important roles, and we think that all of these should be pursued. Many of them are already under active analysis and engagement across the town. But again, the ones that are going to make the biggest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions are the 4 primary goals. Using the state analysis in a tool we got from the Metropolitan Area Planning Committee, we have modeled the greenhouse gas emissions from the town of Westborough. And again, this is community-wide. It's every resident, business, it's the entire community. And using the state goals for energy reduction by segment, the electricity, building, heating, transportation, so forth, reduction, Westborough will be able to demonstrate a 38% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 from the 2017 baseline that we've established. The our commitment is to conform to the state programs and to implement them proactively. One of the things that's dynamic in the state is the goals keep changing. And so within the next few weeks, we expect a new law to come into place that's actually going to change some of these goals. So these goals are based on the rules and laws that are in place today, but we expect them to continue to become stricter and more aggressive over time. In analyzing the other towns and in looking at how we go forward on the implementation phase, we felt that it's really important for us to emphasize these two critical success factors. As the changes that are being called for in this plan really impact everybody, and they impact everybody differently because of the nature of their homes and their age and their economic status and so forth, it's really important that we have a very aggressive and persistent community engagement process where we reach out to the community with the latest information on resources, regulatory, legal changes that are coming from the state, and help the community through this transition. Timely information is really critical. The most effective time to do the fuel switching from fossil fuels to electricity is when you're replacing the furnace anyway. So we need to get the information, get the education and awareness out there in advance so that when the furnace goes down, people are ready to make the decision to go to an electric solution. And again, our main theme is in regard to channeling and driving programs that are coming from the state, incentive programs as well as regulatory changes. The second element of this is that we need to have an ongoing governance process for this climate action plan implementation. And this is a piece of work that we're just starting. It is, we need to define with the town staff, what are the roles within the town government and how is that going to be implemented? And we believe that it's very critical that a sustainability coordinator be identified, probably a new hire, maybe a part-time hire, that will be the focal point for this effort. Other towns have had great success by hiring such a person. The towns that have hired them have identified savings that far exceed the cost of the position, like 5 to 8 times more money comes into the town through grant money or reduced energy bills than the cost of the sustainability coordinator position. So it's really critical, we believe, to have that position filled over time. It's not going to happen immediately. But that isn't the only person that needs to be engaged in taking action on this climate action plan. Many of the departments in town will be impacted by this. And so as we as a town adopt this plan and move forward, it's not a dramatic increase in the amount of work, but it's just doing the work differently. It's doing it with a new sensitivity and with this additional goal in mind. So in addition to town staff, Sustainable Westborough will play a key role. Sustainable Westborough, as you know, was formed, I believe you know, to basically help the town achieve green community status. And we have successfully done that. And with that accomplishment, we brought $300,000 worth of grant money to the community. The Sustainable Westborough is going to take on some new roles and take on some of the responsibility, particularly around community engagement. And so we are starting meetings with the town staff, Christie's office in particular, and the senior staff, and key peoples from the task force and Sustainable Westborough to discuss how do we operationalize this plan in the community, in the town. Other boards, such as the Planning Board and the Open Space Preservation Committee, will, I believe, need to take on important new perspectives and take action consistent with the goals of these plans. We're looking for these boards to bring their expertise to these issues and look for opportunities to make changes that are going to help us achieve the outcomes we've set here. Our status is we've got the draft plan, which has been distributed to you, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. Begin the planning process with Christy Williams, the town manager, and the senior staff, and with Sustainable Westborough on the implementation. Collect the reviews from different boards, and we broadcast this very widely, looking for feedback from the community, and consolidate that into a new document, a updated publication version, basically take it from draft status into final publication, and go back to the Board of Selectmen on April 13th with a request for approval of the plan. So my request of the two committees meeting here today is to give us feedback directly, but also to give feedback to the Board of Selectmen concerning your support of this plan. So that's what I've prepared for discussion. Tim, was there anything you would like me to add as a task force member before we get into kind of open discussion?
I don't think so, Pete. You're gonna, I think, call on, I mean, it may be obvious to everyone on the planning board, but our focus, wearing my planning board hat in the years ahead, is gonna fall significantly in the building electrification space, and even, some of the energy efficiency items that relate to building envelope. So there's more work for us to do. There's work ahead around rules and programs, as Pete mentioned, that we can only anticipate the state will devise. But certainly we know things like the stretch energy building code are coming, and understanding how we deliberate about that, enact it, whether it comes in and is enacted automatically because we're a green community. Even still, we'll have the responsibility, I think, to get the word out to the community, particularly the development community, about what is coming, ahead of when it's coming, so that we can work with them and be ahead of it. Those are the only comments I'd make, Pete. Thanks.
Why don't we turn to the rest of the board for questions, either from the planning board or the open space committee. Just if you could raise your hand, I'll try to recognize you so that we don't all speak at once. Okay. All right, well, I do have a question, Pete, about well, Hazel, I just saw your hand go up, so you go first. You just stepped on mute.
I think one of the things that can be important is to let the community know the cost individually to the individual members of the community and the cost to the community on this. I think that's one of the first questions that's going to come up. And I think it's very important that the community be fully informed of what the cost is as an individual homeowner, as a business owner, and as a taxpayer. So I hope that the plan is able to put forward some specific information on this.
Yeah,
Pete,
there
any
is,
comments or response?
I'm sorry.
I said any comments or response, so
Yeah.
you go ahead.
So there is no cost of approving the plan. The implementation of the plan, the cost for the town is, we see it is primarily in this position we believe is needed to coordinate it. But this position in other towns is paid back many times over. In regard to the cost of changing to electric solutions for homes and for transportation, these changes are coming, and they're not coming because Westborough wrote a climate action plan. They're coming because of state mandate and because of the science that's driving us in that direction. So what we're advocating for is a proactive approach of bringing the best practices and the best information in regard to that transition.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think it's really important. I mean, if I, as a taxpayer in the community and as an individual, would want to know, fine, we're thinking about adopting this, but what is the effect going to have on me financially?
What are you thinking about, Hazel, in particular?
What I'm thinking about is switching from, for example, putting a new furnace in, a new type of heating. What the cost is to switch. I mean, I don't think people know, for example, what the cost is of electric versus gas cars or hybrid versus gas. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. I mean,
Yep.
I think, and what's the cost going to be if the town goes ahead and switches over their buildings to energy efficiently? As a business owner, what is it going to cost me if the town adopts this, or if the state adopts it? It's those kind of costs. It's the hard costs.
So I think in every one of the goals and this breakdown of strategies, you'll find a section where we've attempted to look at economic costs and where they'll be born and where they lie. Specifically in building electrification and the example you provided, we think there's going to be a real need to be transparent and provide the community well in advance of having to make any mandatory changes with those kinds of economic breakdowns. And because our building stock ranges, from hundreds of years old to brand new, the cost of electrification, which typically includes, weatherization and sealing of the building envelope, will vary, but it won't vary, infinitely. And so we need to do a much better job of giving, homeowners an honest look at case studies. And we have those, we have the way that I believe that we've done a decent job of outlining how we'll approach the question that you raise, which I think is the preeminent one for anyone. We're talking primarily about asking private property owners, whether vehicles or real property, to potentially make big investments outside the cycle time, as you point out, in replacing their furnace. And so understanding the economics of those decisions and what options are available to them and what programs are available at the state level to mitigate those out-of-pocket costs, as well as the long-term cost of ownership. We feel a real responsibility that needs to be published information, generally available, trustworthy, and, as Pete said, updated. So it's something that's going to need to be updated.
Yeah, in the community engagement comments I was making had to do with discussing all of what Tim has just described. It's trying to provide timely, forthright information in regard to the person's pending decision. In the end, it's a resident or a business owner's decision, so the economics need to be understood. But there'll also be opportunities which come in the form of rebates or other incentives from the state that are sometimes time-bound. And so we can make sure that the information is available to decision makers when they, so that they know what programs are currently available and if there's expirations and so forth. So that community engagement is a key part of what we're trying to convey. Because in the end, it's going to be thousands of people making thousands of decisions, and it needs to make sense in their, it's got to, the budget's got to work, the economics have to work.
Okay, let me just have one short follow-up is, all right, as a member of the community, let's say, do I have to do this? I
Nope,
mean, am I forced to do this?
you won't, but the state may raise the cost of oil and gas to the point where you'll be incented to do it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jim Ball, I saw your hand up.
Thanks, Mark. Pete and Tim, I'm just thinking about a resource page that we might be able to build, or does the state have one in terms of, for example, vendors? You go and Google, solar roof, and you get so many different types. I worry about fraud, particularly for seniors. Is there a way that we can, I don't know if promote's the right word, or maybe it's a blog or whatever, where people have had good experiences with vendors that do it right, resources maybe the state has of, you can lease a solar system to a company that wants your roof, or you can buy it. And I'm just thinking about over time, who do I ask about when I want to electrify my office building, who's going to tell me the truth, who isn't just motivated by economics?
Yeah.
Is there a way for us to build that type of tool?
So we are anticipating doing that. And one of the things we've done is we've joined a consortium of 9 other towns in the Metro West area that are working on plans like this to help our communities through this transition. That group has put together a proposal to MAPC to build specifically around heat pumps, to build a vetted vendor list that those communities can refer to. As a municipality, we can't say use this vendor and not that vendor unless you go through a structured process, an RFP and so forth. So MAPC is helping these 10 communities, and we're at the table to go through a structured process where we can identify preferred vendors and vendors that have been vetted by those communities through a program. The state has done this type of work through the Mass Clean Energy Center and Mass Save. So there are other state level agencies that have done it for energy efficiency in the past. So we're anticipating doing what you're asking for.
We're going to start. We're going to start small, Jim. Right now, we'll have a Mass Save program that I'm working on in town for small business owners, for example. So we could look at your building and what the program or the multi-town program that Pete talked about. Is there a new concept called an energy coach, which is somebody unaffiliated with a vendor who helps, particularly our commercial and industrial base, where the energy switching and insulating is very building dependent, be very complex with regard to their operations, but bring them professional engineering quality analysis and make that available to them as a business owner in Westborough, and likewise similar geared programs for the residents, taking into account the needs of seniors for assistance and some translation, and people across the spectrum. So we will start small. We will start immediately by putting some information up on the climate plan websites, but understanding the vendor community and people understanding that an energy assessment doesn't commit them to anything. And it's not really a sales ploy to buy siding for their house. Those are some of the awareness things that we have to overcome. We know those are biases, so we want our communication strategy to reflect that.
Great, thank you.
And as we are saying this, it's hopefully very clear that these are not things that are going to happen overnight. These are activities that need to be engaged in persistently over time. And we're going to build the skills. And Tim alluded to the municipal partnership with Mass Save is a good example of us learning how to do this better, how to engage in this space, which is new for the town, to be in this discussion. So it's going to take us time to build it out, build out the skills and build out the practices.
Okay, Peter Bouchard, I saw your hand up.
Thanks, Mark. Pete, that was a great presentation. It was very, I learned a lot. So my whole concern is, I guess I'm going to go back to Hazel's comment regarding the individual homeowner. As a real estate agent, you know, when houses are being purchased in town, a lot of times the negotiation is happening during the purchase. And most of the times the person selling the home wants to, you know, wants to come up with the lowest cost, you know, for, you know, to update a system. And my concern is that most of the energy efficient systems tend to be high cost. And so for this program to really take off, you know, you guys mentioned we need thousands of people to buy in at the individual level. I think what Pete Dunbeck mentioned about Mass Save and actually highlighting the rebates and the incentives, it will be vital to make this actual program take off. You know, when I sell a house, I always, you know, I indicate, oh, the first thing you should do is call Mass Save. And, you know, if we educate all the realtors in the area, I'm just throwing this out there, you know, to follow these programs, and we actually educate, you know, companies within our town, that might be a way to actually tackle this process, because a lot of times these heating upgrades are happening when the house is being purchased, or, you know, when the house is being built. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else, or any response to that, Peter? Or
No, I think energy efficiency is definitely the first step in this process. And I think that some of the more, let's say, complex decisions like going to heat pumps and kind of the fuel switching is going to take more time. And I think there is these specific windows where your furnace has gone out. That's the time to do it, because when you buy a new gas furnace, it's going to last you for 15 or 20 years. You're not going to be wanting to rip it out in 5 years because the state came out with some rebate or something. It's just not going to make economic sense. So you have to start with energy efficiency, and then be prepared for these technology transition points where you're doing the equipment replacement. Those are like two of the foundational concepts for the building sector. The other point I'd say is, I think it's valuable to include in the real estate process an energy disclosure where people do discuss how efficient their house is, because that then creates value for people who've made the investment in energy efficiency.
Pete, I think that's a very valid idea. I think that's a smart idea. But I still think it really comes down to the overall price. And what happens is people are thinking in the moment, yeah, if the state's going to come down in 5 years and require changes, yeah, that would be an issue for a lot of people. But when a house is being sold, it's a lot of people's largest transaction. And if the heating system needs to be updated at that point, people tend to go for the most, go for savings and not energy efficiency. But I think what you're trying to do here is fantastic. And I think that's where we need to move. I was just throwing this out as something that I run into. That's all.
Totally understand the challenge. Get it.
Jim Ball again. Yep.
Yeah, Mark, just one more comment. I think Pete's comment is really important. I think we may want to educate realtors often, as you know, in a close or a transaction like that, you can either do the work or you can give the new buyer a credit. And what we might want to try to start doing, give the buyer a credit towards putting in a higher quality system, because they're the ones that are going to, number one, either benefit from that efficiency, maybe a lower bill if it's solar, but if it's improving the heat system, letting the buyer know that, hey, you're going to have to rip this thing out and change it if you don't choose the credit and put the money into the new type of system, the state will mandate. And so there's going to, obviously you guys are talking about education for lots of people. But Pete's point is that, encourage realtors to say, hey, take the credit, because you're going to, and even have the knowledge to say, you're going to have to change the system in 5 years either way. So do that instead of having the seller fix the system to a system that's not going to fit the mandate in the near future.
That makes absolute sense. I tend to do that as well, because you get to watch the work being done. So I think that would be an easy sell. So I think that's a very valid point. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I'll add one thing. The discussion we're having is true across the state, and it's not like we have a unique circumstance here. So the state has set up these goals where, for example, they are driving to get 1 million households on heat pump only heating systems by 2030. And by 2050 to have essentially all households on heat pumps, and get rid of all the fossil fuels for households. So just this discussion we're having is going to happen in every community. They have houses that are 80 and 100 years old. They all have the same thing. So the state's going to have to come up with creative, aggressive programs in order to drive this transition. What we can do is help our community through that transition by being aware of it and bringing the best practices to Westborough.
So, Pete, I just want to make a few comments. First of all, I think the biggest thing you need to focus on is education and outreach at this point, so that people understand what is mandatory with this plan and what is voluntary, and then what incentives there are for the voluntary actions, and what incentives might be coming. And that's got to be done through an aggressive education and outreach program, not just to boards like this, but I think to expand on what Peter Bouchard said, not just realtors, but the business community in general needs to be informed. As someone who, not just the business community, because I think consumers need to be informed, but as somebody who put a new furnace in my own home 5 years ago through the Mass Save program, but still, got a pretty good rebate, but still spent quite a bit of money on a new furnace. I'm a little frustrated that there was no education at that time as to what my options were. And I feel, I'm a huge proponent of cleaner energy, and I would like to transition my home to that, but I feel like that, I don't want to throw away the investment that I've already made, unless I can, unless I have the education as to how that's going to affect me. I'm willing to spend some money to transition, but I just need to know what resources are going to be out there to help me do that. And I'm a little frustrated that the vendors that I dealt with didn't inform me as to what options. So I guess what I'm saying is not just realtors, but heating contractors, electricians, they need to be informed as to what options there are, so that they're giving consumers options when we reach out. And the same thing would go for car salesmen, because I bought 2 cars in the last 3 years, and I really wasn't given any guidance as to the benefits of an electric vehicle over a gas-powered vehicle, and the reliability of that. And I guess I'm a little frustrated on that, because I kind of wish I had bought an electric car, but I really wasn't given a lot of information on that. And I've got to take responsibility as a consumer to educate myself on that, but I need help. And I think a lot of people in this town need help understanding what those options are. As far as the climate action plan goes, I think I think it's a tremendous step in the right direction, but people have to understand what is mandatory and what is voluntary, and then how that's going to affect their decisions as we go forward. I hope that makes sense, Pete.
Yes, it does. And I upgraded my furnace probably a little before you, about 8 years ago. Got, super high efficiency natural gas with the plastic pipe for the exhaust and stuff. It's really a nice system. Spent a lot of money on it. And I can't imagine ripping it out at this time. It's like, how long are we going to be in the house? What age? It's all those personal decisions, and everybody's got their own story of how they're going to make it. So, but when that one goes, I'm sure I'll go to a heat pump of some sort.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is, I want to know as a homeowner, and I think business owners, property owners, whether they're commercial property owners or residential property owners, I think we want to know what's available to us and what, if something comes along that I can, feel like there's like it's a worthwhile investment for me. I'm willing to spend money to transition to cleaner energy, right? I'm not, it's just at some point, I don't want to throw away a really good furnace like you talked about. But,
Yeah. And I think the technology is emerging, and it wasn't there 5 to 8 years ago, the way it is now. And in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be even better. There's also other changes, there's structural changes. For example, the plan for the state is to discontinue all rebates and incentives through Mass Save on fossil fuel furnaces. So they'll all go away. They're going to put all that money into electric options. So it's shifting the rebate money that comes from the utility funds into this transition. So those things are going to play out over time. Contractors are going to get more experience with it. So more and more of the contractors will have experience installing these newer technologies. It's going to take time. I think the town can play a valuable role. I think we could be active in the collection and dissemination of information, whether it's from the utilities like Mass Save or whether it's state programs. I think we could play a valuable role in the transition. But to Hazel's point, nobody's going to be forced to make the change, but there will be structural changes which make it economically advantageous to make the change.
Okay. And I think that's part of the education we need to get out there so that everybody understands that this plan is not not a mandate. There may be mandates coming from the state, but this plan itself is not does not require anything. That at least that's my understanding of it.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments, questions?
Hey guys.
Hey, sorry.
Hey, sorry about that. Hey Pete, I just wanted to reach out to you because I think your plan I read through the whole thing. I think it's phenomenal. Some of the background I have here is I was a recycling coordinator in Framingham, and I was their point person for their lead in green communities. And I sat through Mass Save's presentations and conferences and helped Framingham take that step forward. And then when I left that position, I took over the family business in Westborough and was on the other side of the coin, having to make those green decisions. And I've got to be honest, working with a man in his 70s and trying to convince him to buy a paper cup at 7 cents a cup over a styrofoam cup at 0.004 cents a cup was a really hard battle. I like to talk to him about the triple bottom line. We don't have just the financial bottom line anymore, but we also have the environmental bottom line, and his mentality has always been there's one bottom line. And I think coming from a business standpoint, we would really be doing good things if we had a seminar for local business owners on options. Because I can tell you, going from styrofoam to paper this past year, it was tens of thousands of dollars on top of the additional tariffs that were placed on orders. It was thousands and thousands of dollars additional that we didn't normally pay. So for me, I understand why we have to do that, but to explain to my father why what was working in the past doesn't work anymore, I think it would be really helpful to have some type of conference, seminar, something for the local business owners. And then different outlets. I know you can't promote sales reps. You can't say, hey, go to WB Mason and they're going to have a great deal. But to have companies come in, you may be able to get a collective bargaining agreement in town. So I know some of the distributors I work with, if I collectively bargain with other ice cream shops in the region, we get a better price. So I don't know if the town has leverage to pull in school systems and businesses, I don't know. But to work for the town, businesses in town, a lot of us are small, so we don't have that collective bargaining. That would be super helpful. And then I know as far as energy goes, a friend of mine has a business out in California, and the town that she's in, the municipality rents the house tops from all of the citizens. And similar to what Shrewsbury does by having their own energy, their town has their own energy, but it's supplied by solar panels on everybody that buys into the town energy program. And it's just really interesting. So it's not taking the big leap of having your own solar system on your house. It's something with a little more of a security net. But there's definitely some awesome benefits out there. And I know the Mass Saves programs in conferences that we used to go to, they had some great images that, you know, they would just give people to put in flyers about comparing systems and long-term benefits. So
There have been in the, through the agency called Mass Clean Energy Center, programs where communities could run a one-year initiative with basically a volume purchasing on solar or on heat pumps. One was called Solarize, the other was called Heat Smart. And the community could put out an RFP, get a vendor to identify as their preferred vendor, and they'd get volume purchasing discounts for the community for purchases during a particular window. And it was a state-defined program. With the new plan that just came out at the end of last year, that program was put on hold, but it's going to get restructured, and the expectation is it's going to be restructured into Mass Save instead of the CEC. So we're anxiously looking to see what that's going to look like in the future. But those are examples of state programs that have been around for 8 to 10 years, and Westborough's never taken advantage of them. But we could bring them into town as we keep an eye on what programs the state is offering.
thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, Mark, I've had my hand raised.
Oh,
wanted
Jim, I'm sorry, I missed you. Go ahead.
That's all right. Pete, I wanted to comment on the plan and on the process. I think the plan is excellent. Level of detail. I know your passion and Tim's passion for this topic. And having worked with you for years, I know that it's exciting to have it come to this point. So nice job. On the process, everyone here tonight has talked about information and making sure that all the different stakeholders in the community are informed. I look at 2 different examples of the process to winning over people's hearts and minds to support a new initiative. First is the new housing choice initiative and legislation of the state. That was something that was coming for several years and was talked about by the practitioners and the legislators, the planners, but was not made known to the general decision makers and elected officials, as well as the residents of the communities within the Commonwealth. And now, since the legislation has been passed a couple months ago, and the program is being rolled out by the regional planning agencies and by departments at the state, and we've had multiple, probably tens of listening sessions about the program. Having attended that and asking questions of the people who are going to eventually run the program, they can't answer the questions. And that's because they didn't involve the stakeholders initially while the program was being written. I think that the other example is our own community master plan. So we have a huge master plan committee, 25 people. Consultants thought we were nuts to have 25 people. The reason that we wanted such a large committee was so we realized that there were many different, diverse stakeholders, and we needed to have representatives from those different interests. So we have a large committee. I think that will help the community understand, because everybody talks to their neighbors, their friends, their business partners, their social partners, and they tell them about the plan, and that raises the level of interest. At our first public hearing, a little over a year ago, we had 120 people from the public, not associated with the overall Master Plan Advisory Committee. At our second, that was a live meeting, and we aren't going to live meetings right now, obviously. But at our second public hearing, as you know, recently we had 82 people total, and 50 some of those were from the public. That's pretty good, actually, at a virtual open meeting. People now are informed of the plan. We have more people watching our meetings and asking questions. I had high school students and a teacher contact me today. They want to see all of our meetings and have a class charrette about the master plan. It's being noticed. People know what we're doing. It's getting great support, but that's because we've made it very visible. I think that in order for the planning board to more than ideologically be aligned with this and in agreement with this and supportive of this, the public process has to run its course. There should be meetings with our largest energy users in town. And I know, Peter, you've tried to do that. You've tried to seek out the names to have one-on-one meetings with the largest commercial property owners. But we need to have a public listening session, because a lot of people don't understand what this all means. There are people who aren't interested in green energy. They need to be interested, because it is the coming way of the future. And that won't happen until the plan is really given to the public. So my comment on the process is, I believe that it can be done, but I think it needs to be done in a broader base, maybe a special public meeting that's publicized a month in advance and hit on the town webpage, hit on Facebook, and people creating excitement and anticipation to learn about the Climate Action Task Force. My comment.
So I totally agree with the importance of the community engagement, and it's we held tens, maybe 30 meetings. It's actually in the document of different places we went to try to talk about the work that was ongoing in the creation of it. And now in the distribution of this, we've sent it to as many committees as we can in nonprofits like Westborough Community Land Trust, Women's Club, Garden Club, so forth. So we are continuing to try to create visibility for this, but it's an ongoing process, and totally agree that engagement with the community, and it's different tools will be needed for residential versus commercial and industrial. I just put a little blurb in the 495 Metro West Partnership. Their newsletter that came out today has a little blurb about the Climate Action Plan. So we are working really hard to reach the business community. I don't have the connections into the, to the local business. We're presenting to the Rotary Club and so forth. So I think there is a challenge, and I look forward to working with town officials in regard to better penetrating into the business side of Westborough. But I think it's an ongoing process, and I totally agree that it's important.
Yeah, I think the EDC, the Economic Development Committee, can help you with that. And I know you're going to be speaking with them first day of April. That'll be a good time, but I think they can help you hold a much larger forum.
Okay, yeah, and I talked to them a couple times already.
All right. All right, I think we spent quite a bit of time on this. Does anyone else have anything important they want to add? All right, well, Peter, I want to thank you for coming in. I think it's an incredibly important topic, and I really appreciate the efforts that your task force has put out on this. And I wish you.
Will the committees be taking an official making an official recommendation to the Board of Selectmen?
We can do that. I don't know if the board is ready to do that tonight.
We're looking for a presentation on the April 13th meeting, so, you know, it'd need to be a week or so in advance of that.
Okay. How does the board feel on that? Do we want to move forward with a recommendation tonight or have further discussion? Do you feel like you need, you know, to
Mark, I could offer to draft a motion for our next meeting.
Yeah, why don't we do that, Tim? And that'll give everyone a chance to go through the document as needed. You know, I think we've had a chance to look at it so far, but maybe we can put a formal motion onto the next agenda.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, to be honest with you, we didn't publish a vote or of any kind in our agenda, so I'm not sure how the open meeting laws address that. So maybe I think we definitely need to push that to the next meeting. So Tim, Kayla, if you could put together a draft and get it to Jim Robbins so he can distribute it, a draft motion, we will consider that at our next meeting, and that should be in plenty of time.
I'll do that straight away. And Pete, I think this will be useful for some of the other formal boards and committees too, that
Yes.
we circulate a draft motion so that people understand what it is we're looking for, or what it is the planning board is the Board of Selectmen are looking for from the other boards and committees.
Yeah, so we could chat offline and get a
Okay.
template,
Great.
build a template.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming in. I do appreciate it. Before we move on to the next item of business for the planning board, we have to adjourn the open space meeting. You know, just officially adjourn that. So we're not adjourning the planning board meeting. We're going to continue that after, but I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the open space meeting.
Second.
Hazel, you can't second that. You're not on the open space.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Who was that?
That's Don. I'll
Oh,
second.
Don. Thanks, Don.
Yeah.
All those in favor, I'll do a roll call vote. Don Seeley,
Yes.
John Gelsich. None had to go. Kelly,
Yes.
okay, and I vote yes, that's 3-0 in favor of adjournment. All right, so moving on, the next item of business on our agenda was the Silver Hollow Estates easement. We're withdrawing that. They no longer need that. And so we'll move on to the next item, which is a continuation of the public hearing on the West Park Drive extension definitive subdivision plan. Jim Robbins, it's my understanding we just got some comments from Beals and Thomas today regarding the engineering review. So I think we're probably going to have to continue this to a future meeting, but I'll let you comment on that first.
Are you calling on me? I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't hear
Jim
you.
Robbins, I'm calling on you.
Okay, thank you. So as you know, the public hearing for West Park Drive Extension Definitive Subdivision Plan is open. Some of the comment letters that we received, one from our peer reviewer regarding Flanders Road in the intersection with East Main Street, I'm still waiting for the final document from our peer reviewer. I expected that I'd receive that today, did not. And I know that Dan Feeney, I see, is on the call. He sent me new revised plans this afternoon, just after 5 o'clock. I have not had a chance to see them. They need to go to our town engineer, Lisa Elaine, as Lisa had comments on these, and we want to make sure that her required changes are incorporated into those plans. We're not going to be able to give you substantive comment this evening. Even if we did, you'd still need to continue the definitive plan hearing. I'd recommend that you do so, that you continue it to our next meeting, which I believe is April 1st. Is that correct?
Kristen,
It's April 6th.
April 6th. Thank you. And at that time, I will be preparing a decision, a draft decision for the applicant to look at in advance and for the board to look at in advance. And I'm assuming between now and then, Beals and Thomas will get with Lisa so that Lisa can issue a final comment letter.
so Jim, you think that you'll have enough time to get these comments, draft a decision and distribute it to the applicant and the board so that we can review it and possibly close the meeting on the 6th and vote on the decision?
That's my goal.
Okay. So any questions from the board on that process or any comments? Okay.
Just
Anyone
as a
would-
point
Go
of
ahead.
clarification, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mark. I had a question today raised about the ability to vote on a public hearing and what constitutes a public hearing. So just to clarify that for the board, because I know that some people are short tenure on the board. A definitive plan or any permit hearing opens when there's a requirement by the State Zoning Act, for a public hearing. In the case of a preliminary plan, which was the first phase of the West Park Drive subdivision, that does not require a public hearing. So all of the meetings that were held with the applicant at that time, prior to rendering a decision of approval in the preliminary plan phase, did not require public hearings. A member of the board can review the minutes of hearings, or I should say meetings that they missed, and still vote on a preliminary plan. However, when a plan requires a public hearing, like a definitive plan or a special permit or any other action that the board takes that requires a public hearing, the state says that if you miss one evening of a public hearing, and I say one evening because we've continued the West Park Drive extension plan multiple times, and yet the hearing has been open on our agenda multiple evenings. If you miss one evening, that's considered missing a public hearing. And if you miss more than one, the law says you're not qualified to vote. And the reason for that is, even if you did review the minutes, watch the tape, ask questions, you would not be able to ask questions the evenings that you missed. The Mullen Rule allows you to miss one meeting. They feel that if the state feels if you missed more than one meeting, you've missed more than one opportunity to ask questions. So as it stands right now, if you've missed more than one evening of the definitive plan public hearing, you cannot vote. If you've missed one or less, one or fewer, you can vote. If you've missed one, you just have to review the minutes or the tape and then sign the Mullen waiver that says you've done so. And then the chairman will ask if you've had the opportunity to review the record and if you want to ask any questions, and that qualifies you to vote. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I wanted to ask the applicant, I think Mark Baralt is here. You had any comments on this before we continue the hearing?
No, we're asking to have this continue to the next meetings to give both Caruth and the town and Beals and Thomas and our traffic engineer time to review the plans and the peer review when it comes in.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark. And Kristen, since this is a public hearing, I will just ask if there's any comments from the public. Have we heard any emails or anything?
Let's see. Nope, I don't have any emails in the planning account.
Okay. All right, then, if there's no further comment, I will make a motion to continue the public hearing on West Park Drive definitive subdivision to April 6th at 6:30.
Second that, Mark.
Any discussion of the motion? We'll do a roll call. I believe that Peter can vote on, can Peter vote on this? Jim, you just went through this.
He's not voting to take action on the approval, so yeah, technically he could vote to
You
continue.
vote to continue? Okay. All right, so we'll include Peter on this vote. Go ahead, Peter, how do you vote?
I agree. Yes.
Okay, Tim Taylor,
Yes.
Hazel,
Yes, to continue.
Jim Ball?
Yes, Mark.
Okay, and I'll vote yes. That's 5-0 to continue. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is a master plan update. Jim Robbins, I'll turn this over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the planning board knows, there is a master plan advisory committee meeting this Thursday, beginning at 6:30. And for those of you at home that want to view it, the meeting posting has information on how you can view the meeting. If you have comments, you can submit them according to the rules in the posting. At this meeting this Thursday, the consultant, VHB, will explain to the advisory committee the implementation process, which is the third phase in our master plan study. The implementation matrix will be introduced by the consultant and given to all the subcommittees as well as to each individual member to work on for their area of interest and concentration. That's the first part of the meeting. The second part of the meeting, the members of the advisory committee will be given the opportunity to break off into their subcommittees, much the same as we did at our previous working session, and work to finalize their goals and objectives. Some committees have already done this, but some committees have not completed that work, and this will be a good opportunity to finalize the goals and objectives. For those committees who've gotten past that, we can begin work on the implementation matrix or refine any of the action statements that we've been working on. So that will be the second part of the meeting. And that's the way the meeting is structured at this point.
Anyone have questions on that? I'm hoping we'll see you all on Thursday.
6:30.
6:30. Last item on the agenda, I don't think we have minutes, do we? No, so just the only other agenda item is reorganization of the planning board. Every year we have to vote a chair and a vice chair. I don't know if anyone wants to.
I nominate Mark. I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Hazel.
I was going to nominate Mark as chairman and Jim as vice chairman.
Anybody want to second that?
I
I'll
can
second that as well.
do it, Pete.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll give Pete that. All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, we'll do a roll call again. Pete,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Tim,
Yes, to approve those two candidates.
Hazel,
Yes, to approve.
Jim.
Yes, Mark.
Okay, and I'll vote yes as well. And I would just like to say it's an honor that you guys trust me with this, so thank you. Any other business, Jim Robbins?
What happened to Silver Hollow? Did you just skip over it?
They don't want to move the easement. They're gonna go with their original easement.
Okay.
Yeah, so since we're still in session, I'll explain that. Hazel, the reason that was put on the agenda was there's a sewer line easement to one of the lots on Bard Owl, and the applicant was considering placing the water line in the sewer line easement. They met with the town engineer to discuss that. It was possible to make that happen. However, they didn't want to have to come back to the planning board and make amendments to the plan. So they had already shown a way that they could bring the water line from the frontage street to the house. They decided to go back to the original plan as was approved initially by the planning board on the definitive plan. So no need to amend the plan, no new easement requirements.
Thank you.
I
Go ahead, Jim.
I was going to tell you that we have received the application for site plan review for 4400 Computer Drive. That was the former Data General Bank Mellon property. I think you'll find this proposal quite interesting. That hearing will open in April. We're also in the very near stages of receiving a completed site plan review application for 1400 West Park Drive. That's the UMass Brigham's Healthcare Center, formerly known as Partners Healthcare. That should be coming very soon. We're also in discussions with the owner of 8 Technology Drive, who is working to consolidate abutting parcels to create a much larger parcel to allow the expansion of the current use at 8 Technology Drive.
Okay, so we're gonna be busy. Great,
Going to be busy. Spring is going to be busy.
all right. Any other business questions? Peter?
So I'm new, so I'm 2 weeks into this and it's been a positive experience so far. But yeah, the next month, is going to be extremely busy. And when I was running for this position, everyone was talking about, updating the downtown area and taking on a major project like that. So I think the board should eventually evaluate if Robbins has enough resources to actually, to do the projects that we need done for this community. A lot of people are behind us right now and want us to continue to attract businesses to town. I've been looking at surrounding towns and how they're positioned. They usually have someone to do the planning and then someone to do the permitting. So I'm not saying that we need to create a town position right now, but I just think, if we're really going to make a push to really develop the town and attract businesses to it, it might be something that we should evaluate. And that's just my thought.
Yeah, so Pete, I think there's a couple of things to consider on that. I think we need to get through the master plan process so we get some direction from the land use committee and from the community at large as to what changes they'd like us to implement from a zoning standpoint, what changes we can actually have effect on to contribute to the master plan goals. And also there's a staffing study that the town undertook that I think specifically addresses the reorganization of the community development office and staffing levels that might, pertain to what you're discussing. So I think those are some things we have to look at before we, can have an educated conversation on this. But I do think you make valid points.
So thank you. I honestly, I'm just trying to figure out the process, and I understand there's definitely steps to it, but I just wanted to bring it up because it seems like more resources could be useful. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Any comments on that? Anyone else have to? Okay, great. All right. If there's nothing else, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Peter,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Hazel,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to adjourn. Have a nice night. We'll see you in April.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Actually, see you Thursday, probably, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.